Hello, I'm Bishop David O'Connell. I'm happy to be with you via this DVD. Unfortunately, I can't be with you in person because today I am ordaining 6 priests to the priesthood for the Diocese of Trenton. So I think you'll excuse me for not being there personally. But I want to talk to you today about the Gospel of Luke, particularly the parable, the story of the Good Samaritan. It's a familiar passage, perhaps one of the most familiar of all the parables and stories in the New Testament. We know the story well. A scholar is seeking the path to eternal life, and so he asks Jesus to tell him, to show him the way. And Jesus, the good rabbi that he is, he responds with the Shema Israel, the great prayer of the Hebrew people. It's known to every Jew, commanding people to love God and to love neighbor. Now the scholar then asks Jesus, "Who is my neighbor?" And again the good rabbi responds with the story, the parable that we all know as the story of the Good Samaritan. The lesson here, of course, is not difficult to draw from this story. Love comes at times from unlikely places. And it is our responsibility as Christians to turn the unlikely into the likely, to be the ones who show love even when it's not expected. In the story of the Good Samaritan, the characters can be divided into 3 groups. We have the takers, we have the talkers, and we have the givers. Those who beat up on others, those who know all the right things to say and say them often, and those who neither take nor talk. They just do the right thing. They show love. Today we are together as members of the St. Vincent de Paul Society. We think back on our founder, Frederick Ozanam. He was a giver. And the Society of St. Vincent de Paul that he founded in 1833, under the guidance of the French daughter of charity, Sister Rosalie Rondeau, they followed his example in heroic ways, and the St. Vincent de Paul Society still does. We know that Ozanam began with a handful of young men who saw and recognized, like in the Good Samaritan story, the people that were left on the side of the road, the poor, the abandoned, and the marginalized. And Ozanam and his friends were the Good Samaritans of their day. And by the time of his death in 1853, at the age of 40, over 2,000 Good Samaritans followed his example in the footsteps of St. Vincent de Paul, the Church's patron of universal love and charity. His patron and model, Ozanam's that is, was St. Vincent de Paul, a parish priest who lived in 17th century France. Now, he spent most of his life as a priest in Paris in the service of the poor. It is no wonder that Blessed Frederick Ozanam, a layman and a 19th century founder of an organization established to help the needy in Paris, chose to name that organization the St. Vincent de Paul Society. St. Vincent de Paul himself once wrote, "You see a great deal of distress that you are unable to relieve. God sees it also. Bear the pains of the poor together with them, doing all you can to give them peace, to give them whatever help they need, and to remain in peace." Frederick Ozanam knew that well. He wrote, "I have not the honor to be a theologian, but I have the happiness to be a Christian, the happiness to believe, and the ambition to devote my mind, my heart, and all my strength to the service of the truth." It was that service to the truth that led Ozanam to the service of the poor, like his patron, St. Vincent de Paul. Truth opened his eyes to learn and live the gospel of love. This year, what we know as the gospel of mercy. Ozanam put himself into the storylines of the gospel. Now, Robert Pace, who's an internationally known evangelist and philosopher and preacher, He once told the story about a photographer working for a religious publication. Now, the editor of that publication, that journal, commissioned him to go out and find a picture of the most destitute, the most desperate human situation. And after a great deal of walking around and searching and looking, the photographer captured what he considered the perfect picture. From a shadowed alley, he spotted a beggar pleading for food. The beggar lay stretching from his side toward a grocery store that displayed freshly baked bread and all kinds of food. And people were coming in and out of the store, and he had his hand outstretched, but they were ignoring him. Now, the photographer got into position, and with great excitement, he snapped the picture and ran back to his editor to show it to him. Said, "I found the perfect picture." And the editor agreed. He said that did depict human misery in an outstanding and extraordinary way. But then the editor looked at the photographer and said, "So, what did you do? What assistance did you give the beggar after the photograph was taken?" The photographer was embarrassed, humbled, looked down at the ground and said, "Well, nothing." And the editor said to him, "You got the picture, but you didn't get the message." Let us remember, all of us here today in the St. Vincent de Paul Society, we are so fortunate and so blessed. Let's remember the words of Blessed Frederick Ozanam. The poor we see with the eyes of flesh. They're there, and we can put finger and hand in their wounds, and the scars of the crown of thorns are visible on their foreheads. And at this point, incredulity no longer has place, and we should fall at their feet and say with the apostle, "My Lord and my God, you, the poor, are our masters, and we are your servants. You are for us the sacred images that God, whom we do not see, and not knowing how to love him otherwise, shall we not love him in the person of the poor?" St. Vincent de Paul Society answers that question with a resounding yes. I'm so grateful to you as Bishop of this diocese, thankful for the work that you do, thankful that you carry on the spirit of St. Vincent de Paul and Blessed Frederick Ozanam and Sister Rosalie Rondeau, and all of those who come before us to serve the needs of the poor. God bless you for that. God bless them. God bless us all.